Welcome to the WJBM Outdoor Show, brought to you by Midwest Tractor Sales in Jerseyville. We're coming to you from the WJBM studios in Jerseyville, the voice of the Tri-Counties. I'm Aaron Quillan. I operate Monarch Rivers, where the mission is simple: kill big deer. Joining us today, Adam Jumpy Heitzig. Hey, man, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we got this thing going, we were talking about what a wild season it's been.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just been all over the board.
Yes. I mean, we've hunted in everything from a t-shirt to needing the little buddy heater and 18 layers of clothes. I mean, it's been tough out there. I mean, it's been a wild hunting season, and you and I, like I said, we had to quit BSing to have the radio show. Cause I mean, it's been so unseasonable, and our seasons have changed drastically. I mean, we don't have a fall anymore. We don't have a spring anymore. We go directly out of winter from cold, and then all of a sudden it's 95 degrees.
Yeah.
And then we do the same thing in the fall. It's 95 degrees, and all of a sudden it turns down to 20. And I mean, what a wild hunting season. Like I said, hunting in a t-shirt to, last Thursday, sitting in the deer stand, and the little Mr. Buddy heater didn't want to run. It was so cold. So it's been warm.
This is going to get taken in the wrong context, but I call it the toilet bowl, because where we're at, one day it's northwest, the next day it's southeast. There's a swirl going on there.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
It's the swirl. The whole.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We've had some weird winds. I hunted some east winds this fall. That's pretty unseasonable. I mean, for the most part. I mean, unless there's some sort of weather change coming in. But we had some east winds that's pretty uncanny for this part of the world too.
Right. I feel like 20 years ago the predominant wind was southwest, and now it seems to certainly be southeast.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know what would have changed for that to happen, but
I don't know. And, we're kind of speaking to the duck hunters and everything else. Duck hunters have had a wild year as well, from hunting in t-shirts to hunting in, 6 inches of snow here. So I help Blake Church here in town do snow removal. So we were headed to town here last Saturday morning at 4 a.m. And if I had $1 for every duck hunter I met on the road headed west towards the river, I could have afforded to lay in bed and not had to go push snow. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, a solid line of cars coming from Jerseyville towards Quillan. I mean, just one after the other, pulling boats, whatever you want to call it, and everybody else is like, oh, the roads are bad, you need to stay home. And every one of these duck hunters is like, hey, it's a good day to duck hunt.
Yeah, they don't care.
No.
I think it was probably, but so many guys seem to say that it was one of the worst starts ever.
Oh, I believe that.
I think once that weather started getting here, and you'd see different, parking areas just flooded with cars just everywhere. As soon as that weather started to change.
Yes. Yes.
You're right. It seems like it was really hot during season opener. Did you get out much in October?
We got out a little bit. Harvest seemed to be delayed this year.
Yeah.
So, the job that pays the bills took up a lot of my time in October. But the couple times I did make it out on Halloween. Halloween is always a kind of a gotta hunt. November 5th, I think, is also a gotta hunt. My buddy Greg Suttner says if you're not in the stand on November 5th, then you aren't even hunting. And then Veterans Day is more Boone and Crockett deer killed on Veterans Day than any other day of the year.
I believe that's possible.
So, there's some critical days there into October 1st of November that you need to be in the stand or got to be in the stand.
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I talked and thought last Wednesday here, before the weather change was going to be a smoker, and it was sure a dud for me. I don't know about for you, but what's wild is cell cams, trail cams. We're in the woods more now than what we ever are. We got more maybe insight to what the deer or turkey or ducks, whatever that is. We got more insight into what the population's doing than we ever have,
mm-hmm.
and I think we maybe know less than what we thought we did. I think, what we thought was patterned or what kind of deer we had on a farm, it's probably where I'm trying to go with this. Last year I had a ton of deer on my farm and they were just left, right, and center. Goes back to what we've talked about all year here with food plots. So my food plot, it decided not to rain after July 27th this year. Food plot was tough. Soybeans were tough, as far as yield and everything goes. So, I didn't have the food out there and I'm not seeing the deer. Now, does that correlate? Probably to a point. But I've seen, I seen a third of the deer I seen last year. Deer population is definitely down. I don't know if we had some deer die off this summer with the dryness. I don't know if we had some water supply dry up. I'm a little taken back. Haven't quite, made all my circles. Obviously, you do the same, but I don't know if everybody else is feeling that same, low deer count or not.
I think most people are. Every deer season's different. I can recall bumper acorn years. I mean, we all probably can, but I think this one was a little bit more dominated by acorns than anything I've ever seen.
Okay.
The deer just seem spread out and predominantly on acorns. And I think they still might be, acorns supposed to be the number one food source for a whitetail, but I think it still might be, a little bit dominant on acorns. I don't know if they've switched from white to red, but I think the acorns, I mean, do you ever pop the guts open after you clean them?
No.
Okay. We do that from time to time just to get, what is this eating?
I try to avoid that.
Right. I know. After you get the guts out.
Yeah, I try to avoid that. But
well, I mean, the one buck we killed was 100% acorns.
Really?
And then even in acorn, I guess areas where there's not what I would consider as much acorns is still seem to be dominated by the acorns. A lot of years, high acorn year, I felt like green was something that offsets the digestion or there's something to do with it. I mean, it's the same reason. I'm no biologist, but when a dog's about to puke, they eat grass.
Yep. Yeah.
I think the grass is supposed to settle their stomach. I don't think it's supposed to make them throw up.
Okay.
Again, I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know, but I think something with green is good for offsetting. And so I feel like they've been so spread out. And that's why the deer numbers have seemed down. I've talked to some of our local COs. They didn't have any reports of EHD or anything like that. So I think there was I don't think that we had, usually when you get them from EHD, they go down, they stink really bad.
Correct.
So, I didn't hear about it. But then again, I talked to my friend Jordan, Brandon, their farm, in the river bottom. They got EHD a little while back. And so he's, kind of laid off on the deer hunting and focused more on the waterfowl.
Okay.
Until, a big buck shows up. So
right. Like I said, I've not made all my loops and kind of got everybody's feedback, but I would say, like I said, that deer population is definitely down or more spread out. It's and weather probably plays into some of that a little bit, but it's definitely down.
Yeah, I don't think it's what it was at its peak, but I don't know. Do you think that when it's at that high of a number, that's the healthiest thing?
Well, then you put your farmer hat back on and you say, man, I like these low deer populations. They're leaving my crops alone. I think it's a very much situational or area, case by case. One farm may have too many deer, one farm may be thin. It's very much case by case.
When you bring up the trail cams, I'm a huge believer in the trail cams, as much as I don't like them, because they're, they break, they run out of battery, you do all this work and they might not show up. I really don't love them, but when you do have one that's producing, I love counting the photos and saying doe, 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 buck, doe, and getting a count.
Yes.
Because that's the reality. Right, that's how you get to know your buck to doe ratio.
Correct.
And then there's you can kind of try and do some research or get an understanding of what your carrying capacity is. But the years of seeing 30 deer in a field, I think right now they're starting to get that way because it's late season and they're going to go to the
they're going to start. They're going to start bunching a little bit more here and everything else. But like I said, it just a little taken back from my own previous experiences on we've been on this cane farm here 5 years now.
Okay.
This obviously first year at our new farm here where we're living, but I'm still trying to figure that thing out. That thing's it's going to take some time to get figured out here. But in any case, like I said, from my own personal experiences, I feel like that deer population is down a little bit.
Yeah. I don't.
And that, like I said, that's my personal experiences. Somebody, you go to a different area, different farm, it very well could be different.
I know. I just wish that there was a way that we could measure it. I would love, I asked anybody from the DNR, I always ask them, like, I'd love to get somebody on the radio to kind of talk about the deer statistics and kind of understand the information that we collect from the DNR. Like, I would love that. Like that, just so we had like a baseline.
Correct. There's, technology starting to get there. I'm going to open a can of worms here when I say the word drone, but
I love that word.
There's some technology out there, not specifically those that, could be used to help figure that out. Trail cams or, cell trail cams, is part of that too. But the drone word, I'm going to open this can of worms, aren't I? The drone thing, I think it has its spot. I really do. Mm-hmm. Once again, that's my opinion. That's nobody's, that's not a hard, fast rule, but I think the drone thing does have some applications, especially in herd sizing, figuring out, how many deer are in an area or something like that and trying to come up with a plan. I don't think they have any aspect of use in hunting. I don't agree with that at all. I think if you read the rules, I think in the state of Indiana, they aren't allowed 14 days before hunting season.
Okay.
Illinois, they're not allowed at all. If you see a deer at all with a drone, that's a no, that's harassment of wildlife. I'm not sure I'm in disagreement with that either. I think it could definitely be abused to a point, but I think there is some opportunity there to be for those to be used to manage herd size. I'm on the fence. I haven't come up with a good thing on recovery. I've heard some guys that, talk like, that with thermal is great for recovery. I think that could be, abused to a point. Of course, we got guys running around here today with tracking dogs and different things, that, help recover deer. I mean, the worst thing in the world is for somebody to shoot a nice deer or any deer and not be able to find it,
Right.
That's not, nobody wants that. I mean, that's a tough situation for anybody. So irregardless, maybe if it's properly managed, it might not be a bad thing. Like I said, but I think the drone has a great use for starting to figure out, how many deer are in an area or trying to do some pop counts or something like that.
I'd love it if the DNR started flying a drone and counting the deer when they were yarded up.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I'm saying deer. I'm not surprised that they don't have drones and like go find the heat source of the hunters. And go out and do the permit checks.
You'd have to have a CO officer on here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're not using some technology like that to do stuff like that.
Right. But from a biology perspective, like, let's get the data and let's get the data out so we can make good decisions.
It's no different than our off-the-air conversation. You need to have all the information before you can make a good opinion. So, yes.
Yeah. So you're obviously paying attention to some of the drone research that's going on?
I'm seeing a little bit.
Okay.
I'm also seeing some opinions for and against. And once again, I think everybody's entitled to their opinion. Like I said, my opinion is I think there is some application out there for them, especially, either late winter here, when these deer are bunching up, like you said, be a great time to go out there and maybe get some herd size or some counts on it, or even, late summer and see see what the fawn cycle looks like and see how many fawns did hit the ground, compare January to June or compare January to July and see see how many deer make it through the winter, how many deer actually grow, and maybe be able to, better, figure out this permit thing, figure out how many permits a county actually needs. And maybe even, that helps with the nuisance permit thing too. I think that's a dirty word. I don't agree with it. That's the hunter hat on, the farmer hat. I see the deer damage. I see what deer do to a farm, when you have too many deer in an area. So I see both sides of that. But, like I said, I think that's where that drone has some application is, to be able to, determine, hey, maybe we need to break a county down more, where, hey, this end of the county is going to get some more permits. Of course, that's not fair to all the hunters. So, I don't know, but
yeah, so I'm not as afraid of the nuisance permits as I am the late season doe.
That's tough on some buck population.
That's my dirty word.
Bucks drop them antlers early, and that's gnarly. When we used to have that here in Jersey County, we I'm not saying we were guilty of it. I mean, we were guilty of it, but I mean, you couldn't tell that was a buck that had dropped horns or a doe, you didn't know, so yeah, we're guilty by association, guilty for being guilty, whatever you want to call it. But, we did it. I mean, we took deer in them late seasons and, yeah, they were bucks that dropped antlers. Absolutely.
Right. And I mean, I've been in a stand where, this juicy doe is going to get it. And it gets within, bow range, and it's got black holes on its head. That's not a juicy doe.
Yeah.
And just, you can't hold somebody to a standard when the standards, does it have antlers,
Yeah,
that
right.
that fall off because, and I think that's why, again, it's important to get an understanding of your land carrying capacity. And manage to that. The technology's there now. It's just a matter of we don't even know. I don't know what data we're collecting. And I mean, I'm interested. I'm in the business. I'm interested in knowing.
Absolutely.
And I don't know.
Absolutely. And like I said, in the DNR's position today is, that's harassment. I think they need to maybe think about easing that up a little bit. And like I said, I don't want to see it abused. I absolutely don't want to see it abused, but I think there's some definite application for that to try to nail down and like I said, educational, just to see what kind of data is out there.
And then with, being in the ag business, drones are becoming more and more prevalent. You seeing those?
Absolutely. Lots of my customers are starting to either own their own drone. Most of them have a drone on their farm, by a custom applicator of some sort.
Yeah.
Drones are becoming very popular. I mean, I own a drone.
Okay.
I use a drone in my own farm for field scouting or different things. There's definite applications for it, just from a source of saying, hey, we got a deficiency here, hey, we got a hole here or something like that. It lets you do some scouting in season. And let's be serious here, we all use it to take cool pictures during the fall. We like to have that cool shot of the combine and everything else. So
yeah, that like 360 photography.
Yeah, we're all guilty of that for sure.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yes.
It looks way cool. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from the sponsors. Welcome back to the WJBM Outdoor Show, brought to you by Midwest Tractor Sales in Jerseyville. We're coming to you from the WJBM studios in Jerseyville, the voice of the Tri-Counties. I'm Aaron Quillan. I operate Monarch Rivers, where the mission is simple: kill big deer. For those of you just joining us, Adam Heitzig. We were just talking about, season overall, and then some of the technologies that are out there. So let's talk a little bit more about the deer season so far. Okay. Started out really hot. Season opener was 90 degrees.
Absolutely.
Which was crazy. And then we had still pretty warm throughout all of October, really.
Correct. Well, even I took my daughter deer hunting for the first time here 2 weeks ago. We went bow hunting, archery hunting. We were in my little hut or blind, and keeping a 4-year-old contained in a 6-foot circle is interesting to say the least. But we didn't see any deer, which was not a surprise by any stretch of imagination. We didn't sit still. We weren't real quiet or anything like that. But in any case, we had to have the windows open on the blind because it was so hot in there.
Yeah.
We were just about ready to boil out of that thing. So it, I mean, then turn around and I took her again the second time. We went Saturday night and we had to have Mr. Buddy on because, you know, it was cold. And we're talking about a 10-day window here.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Nah, so it got down, I feel like it got down into the teens. I don't know if it actually got single digits. It might have.
It was single digits, I promise. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Freezing.
Yes. Yeah, we went on our first deer hunt on November 14th there, and you know, by, like I said, 16 days later, I mean, it was single digits. So very abrupt change, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where did you see the best movement?
During gun season here, probably on Saturday night was probably the best movement I saw personally.
Okay.
You know, we got the warm up there and everything else, but we went over, and getting off subject, but getting on the same subject, we went over to Calhoun's playoff game there 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It had been Saturday first shotgun season, I guess. And this is going to tell my age a little bit and tell how. Anyway, I probably haven't been to a high school football game in 20 plus years, over 20 years. And the wife and I decided to go over there. So we went over the game, tough loss. Sorry, Warriors. You know, we're all rooting for you. You guys played your hearts out, and you're going to have to bring back a good team next year. So I'm way off subject. But anyway, we left the game. Well, as we left the game, we didn't take the highway home. We went up Jug Hollow, and we went riding around Calhoun.
Yeah.
This is first shotgun season Saturday afternoon. It's pretty balmy. You know, it was a pretty nice afternoon. You know how many deer we saw? Goose egg.
Really?
And I mean, we left the game at 3:00, and I mean, cruising around Calhoun at 3:00 in the afternoon. I guess that goes back to, you know, what I was trying to say before the break there. You know, this deer thing, you know, deer population, I'm not saying they aren't here and they aren't there, but they're definitely, there's definitely something going on there when you drive around Calhoun County, at 3:30 in the afternoon and don't see a deer.
Yeah. It was definitely a strange year. You know, we shot 3 during the first gun season.
Mm-hmm.
We recovered 2.
Okay.
We had Fink out to track 1 that, you know, we just inconclusive. Deer covered a lot of ground without bedding down. So, you know, hopefully he's still running around. That deer that we did not recover came out by himself, feeding bean field. The other 2 that we shot was an so a bunch of does come out to a food plot, or a food source, and then the bucks start coming out, but all bunched up. And it was that first season, and they're like bachelored up. They're not
interesting.
Yeah, and that happened with both bucks that we did recover on that weekend. And doesn't it seem incredibly early for that to be happening?
Absolutely. You know, and, you know, going back into early November, you know, last year it seemed like that rut hit hard. And I mean, there was bucks running everywhere and chasing does. And you know, even last year, you know, we seen that real hard second rut, you know. This year, I mean, you know, if you weren't in the woods at the right day, there was no rut. You saw absolutely no rut activity. I mean, it was like the rut happened in one day. I mean, that's, like I said, that's coming from my perspective on my farm. I know everything's different. Everybody's different, but you know, to my knowledge, never did really see a second rut. But once again, I go back to, well, I don't have as many deer on my farm right now, you know, so I'm not going to see as much activity that way as well.
Yeah, it was so sporadic. And again, that's why I think just the abundance of acorns, because with that dry, they started dropping early. So then you have that incredibly wet spring. When's the last time we had a spring that wet?
Oh, I mean, the last couple springs have been super wet, and I mean, the last 2 years have almost mimicked each other.
Okay.
Dry early on. If you got in the crop fields and got going, you had some good crops, and all of a sudden it rains for 30 days. Excuse me, you're sitting on the sidelines, and then all of a sudden the water turns off, and we tried raising a crop on, this. It's been an interesting 2 years for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so wet spring the past couple years. I guess maybe it lined up with the oak cycle. I don't know. I just saw more acorns than I ever have. It's just interesting. Like we had good mature deer all season, but it's like we had to work for them.
Which is good. I mean, that's your job to a point, I mean, that's what you're out there trying to do.
Right. Well, I mean, we had to really, so how do you say, probably less opportunities per hunter this year than a normal year.
Okay.
Because the sightings were less, maybe higher quality sightings on average, which I find interesting with no explanation for it, because a lot of times we're doing the same thing.
Right.
But the with that warmth, we were kind of forced to really buckle down and say, all right, what's the plan? How are we going to do this? And maybe because we had to buckle down so much harder because of the consistent warmth, we were surprisingly able to get on, some pretty good deer. More misses and probably a few more non-recoveries than normal. And I'm wondering if somehow those overlap.
It could be.
Right.
Frustrated or not as patient, not thinking or not seeing, if you're seeing deer less, you're thinking, well, maybe this is my only shot, and you're taking a poorer shot than you normally would, rather than, well, I've seen this buck 3 times, and we're seeing him good, well, if you sit in the stand a half a dozen times, you don't see anything, all of a sudden you do see you're the buck you're after, or a good buck, whatever that is, or doe, any sort of deer, and you're like, well, I gotta hurry up, I gotta take this shot, because I don't want to spend another 6 days out here, 6 sits out here and not see a deer. We get busy at times and think, oh, well, it's time to do this, and so you lay the hammer down, or you take maybe a lower percentage or further shot or whatever that is. I can see that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really see much activity in ag fields until maybe the week before gun season. Is when I started to see it.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that.
I don't know. I'm wanting to learn more about the different browses available, natural browses available in the woods. They say that the high quality browse is where you're going to have your, dominant bucks choose those bedding areas.
Okay.
So you want the highest quality browse on your property. That way the deer is spending more time on your property.
See, now you got something else for me to read up on and study up on, because I've never heard that terminology used before, at least.
Well, some of these biologists, it's kind of becoming a more common theme. I had a biologist come out a couple years ago in January, and he was showing me what I would have just normally walked by. And he's like, this is the woody browse, and this is where they're browsing. And he'd show me where they were biting. And it's just no kidding. And then getting an understanding of that. And so a lot of prescribed fire and things like that will increase that browse. You typically have to get more sunlight to the floor. So whether that's TSI or doing some hinge cutting to get, change the sunlight or the canopy. But I'm wondering, how does, I can't identify the species like a biologist can, and that's one of the things that I'm curious about, because I'm talking about, acorns, but maybe there's something in the browse that
they'd rather be after or something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I got my homework to do now.
I think we shot one in, well, it would have been the week leading right up to the first gun. And even in his stomach, there was just a little bit of corn, mostly acorns and some rye, which that field had been, well, that whole farm had been overseeded in rye.
Okay.
And so he was obviously eating some of that. Man, there's a lot of guys put in long sits too.
Absolutely. Some of them guys out there, daylight to daylight, well, before the time change, you talk about them being in the deer stand at 5:30 in the morning and sit until 7:30 at night. And I mean, that's a long day in the stand to see little to no activity, and that, I think that goes back to what we were just talking about there about, not being patient or not wanting to, or maybe taking an opportune shot there. So,
right.
Driving down the road, obviously was coming down here this morning and trying to think about what we were going to talk about today. Normally you prep me a little bit and I couldn't think about what, I had to think about what I wanted to talk about. And I caught myself 2 different times this weekend talking about, I didn't see the young hunters out there. I didn't see, I'm 38 years old. I started deer hunting when I was 10, 12 years old. And I caught myself several times saying, that there weren't the young hunters out there. And I want to publicly, reel that back, so, and this is a great part about social media, youth season, a lot of young hunters out there. I saw, even on our own farm, Ben Heitzig's 2 boys, Lane and Colt, they're both out there, both got deer. We had, Gunner and, gosh dang it, Roy, what's your other son's name? Had the 2 Flowers boys out there as well.
Yeah.
Putting some hours in. So
Okay.
I want to walk back, like I said, what I was thinking about this weekend and saying there wasn't any young hunters out there. There are a lot of young hunters out there. I encourage the young youth to get out there. If somebody's out there and wants to start hunting, find you somebody that does, get out there, put some hours in. Cause I mean, there are a lot of opportunities out there, and at least me personally, I get just as much joy out of seeing that younger generation. No difference in taking my daughter out there. I get just as much joy out there of seeing that that youth coming out there and starting to put the effort in and starting to try as I do almost doing it myself. I mean, it really is heartwarming. Last year I had Ryan Shockey over on my farm. He killed his first 2 deer on my farm last year.
Awesome.
I killed a big deer that morning. I was more excited for Ryan Shockey to kill his first and second deer out of my farm than I was for my big deer. I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm starting to, I mean, like I said, I said that all weekend, and I really wanted to walk that back, and it's really great to see the youth out there.
Yeah.
It's great to see some of that older generation out there too. I mean, I've been deer hunting. I probably started deer hunting at somewhere 10, 12 years old. I'm 38 now, so that means I've been deer hunting for 26 years. Some of them guys have been hunting all the 26 years that I've been hunting, and it's exciting to see them guys still out there doing it. I mean, I've got a great extended family with some aunts and uncles, and it's fun to see them guys out there doing it. Sometimes it's not so much about killing deer sometimes as it is getting together, playing cards, and having a cocktail. So
right.
To recap, it was a great weekend overall. I mean, if you've never been to the Milk Barn or the Deer Shack or the church or any of them places, then you probably have not experienced deer season west of Jersey County, then at least for sure. So
okay, I haven't been to any of these. What are these places that you're speaking of?
Well, that's where all these hunters get together and tell lies.
Okay, yeah. I like it. All right, my bud's got a place up outside of Carrollton. They call it the Shanty.
Yep.
And they do a lot of that, a lot of card playing. Wing cook-off on the first gun season, chili on the second. I haven't been able to make it up there in a couple of years. I
It's a good time. Some of this is, some of this hunting thing, at least in our camp, is it's more of a social aspect than it is a hunting aspect. Brother Joe did an excellent job cooking all weekend. He did a fantastic job. We ate like kings. If anybody has pastrami or brisket or anything like that, it's great. It's pretty great eating. So I can't complain there.
Definitely. And then this year is the first year that they've extended the youth permit into the second season.
It's a great thing. Had a couple customers come in the shop there, and pretty excited that, they got a little more time to take their grandkids out there, kids out there and hunt. So, like I said, it's great. I hope there's some younger listeners out there listening, and, even if they're not engaged in hunting yet, or, maybe didn't get a deer or anything like that, keep after it. Don't get discouraged. Be patient. Take your time. Listen. I don't know. We sit here all day and give good or bad hunting advice. But,
that's the truth.
So anyway, that's the one thing I wanted to do is, like I said, encourage some younger hunters, and hopefully they get out there and get in the woods.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. Well, we're going to take another break, hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the WJBM Outdoor Show, brought to you by Midwest Tractor Sales in Jerseyville. We're coming to you from the WJBM studios in Jerseyville, the voice of the Tri-Counties. I'm Aaron Quillan. I operate Monarch Rivers, where the mission is simple: kill big deer. For those of you just joining, Adam Heitzig here. And Adam, you mentioned something earlier that I really can resonate with. The new home place and hunting that. You said there's a lot to figure out there. I had a very similar experience, a piece of property that I own that there's kind of in the center of it. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I've never been able to really, figure out, all right, how do I set this up? How do I set up on this? And I actually we had to hang a stand to get in where these deer were. But I was thinking about it so hard, and it was like for a period of a couple of years to where I was inactive. I just never did anything because I thought about it too hard.
Right.
What do they call it? Paralysis by analysis.
Yep.
I had a buddy come in. Where do you think the stand should be? He goes, well, there's a tree right there. It was that easy. We hung the tree, and that night we shot the buck we were trying to shoot.
Yeah. I call it negative selling is what I call it.
Okay.
So, I'll look at some numbers and be like, well, that's too much money difference, or that's too high. That guy's never going to buy that. And you can talk yourself out of like calling a customer back. You're like you're avoiding that customer. It's like, well, there's no way that guy's going to do that. Well, you don't know until you ask. And you're saying the same thing. You avoided hunting a piece of property because you're like, well, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you're gonna screw up.
Yeah.
We're all going to screw up. That's the long and short of it. Now the great thing about hunting and tractor equipment sales and everything else is you're probably going to get a second chance at it. I mean, there is do-overs, there is a second opportunity to go out there and do these things,
Yeah.
So, you hang that stand in the wrong spot, well, it needs to be 30 yards that way. Well, that's a pretty easy thing to correct at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to the youth hunter thing, don't be scared to get out there and try, even if you don't have the best gear or the best gun or the best stand or whatever that is, our ancestors killed deer with open sights and flannel coats. They didn't have scent gear and scopes. And anyway, I mean, it doesn't take top of the line stuff to get it done. And there's plenty of people out there that are more than willing to let you use that nice stuff too. But, yes, you can talk yourself out of, a good hunting spot. If you're too scared to try, yes, you can talk yourself out of a good hunting spot.
Yeah. Well, as that relates to your farm and figuring it out, what are some of the things that that you've done to try to figure the farm out, and what are some of the things that you need to do
we do the trail cam thing, you try to see where deer are at, or where, start getting a pattern and everything like that. And I'm guilty of the same thing you just said, Aaron. I'm guilty of not wanting to, get out there and mess it up, and so, you try to stay out of it. The biggest thing that, I always think, that we overlook is access, and my farm is no different than anybody else's farm. I don't have the greatest access, you gotta walk through the wrong spot to get to a stand. Well, if we create some access or create a, better way to get to a stand or something like that, that's probably one of the bigger things I need to work on is some access. Get myself the ability to get into the backside of my farm without walking completely through the middle of it is probably one of the bigger steps that I need to take.
Okay.
But that's a huge thing. You start talking about walking to a stand, and, have to walk through the middle of a farm. Well, if you can access it from a different side, well, that's where we have to fire up the bulldozer, the skid steer, or whatever that is, and make us some access. So,
okay.
Anyway, that's probably the biggest thing I need to work on. The other thing I need to work on is my body. I'm completely out of shape to hunt so far and so long. Yes.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
So we're talking about something real here. Guys have gotten pretty dependent on side by sides and four wheelers. Walking to the stand and everything else it's obviously good for us. But how many deer are you poking out of the woods? Riding a side by side halfway to the stand rather than hiking. Obviously there's other alternatives, e-bikes or regular bicycles or stuff. But at the same time, maybe putting in a little more effort, the other 300 days of the year might be good for us too, as far as that goes. So,
right. I saw a thing on the e-bike where, that, the drone research guy videoed these guys going into their hunting areas, and the deer that got bumped from the e-bike ran farther than they did from the trucks or the side-by-side, whatever the other method of accessing the farm was.
Interesting.
And the rationale that they thought behind it was, on the e-bike, it's so quiet that when you get up to that deer, you really startle it. So then it runs farther, more adrenaline.
Interesting.
Which I find that interesting because, it's a technology that's very applicable.
Absolutely.
And I think it'd be very applicable when you have to get to the back of a farm on some of these days where the snow is melted or where it's rained for 5 days. That walking with those muddy boots opposed to, I guess those wide, I don't own one, but those wide tires apparently handle really good in the mud.
I've never been on one. Don't know, but there's something to it. Obviously you're not going to work up a sweat getting to the stand, so you don't have to worry about packing layer. It kind of helps play into that, but in any case,
we might have it too easy now. We might have it too easy.
I think, I kind of go back to that, we kind of, my wife says I hunt pretty bougie now. I hunt in a blind with a heater and, this, that, and the other, and everything else, and I walk past 2 ladder stands 90% of the time, walking to that and think, man, I don't want to sit in there, so there is something to that, we used to be tougher or hungrier or madder at them or whatever you want to call it. The times definitely have changed, I guess we are probably getting soft.
Yeah. Well, I've sat in some pretty cold stuff. And I'm okay with those blinds when it gets brutal.
Yes.
But, then again, unless you can pick that blind up and move it, it's stationary.
Yes.
If the deer aren't there, you're not going to.
Absolutely.
We had a little bit of that over this second gun season. These guys, just their style of hunting, they wanted to hunt fixed blinds, even on those warmer days, opposed to ladder stands. And, it was really hard to,
limited opportunities.
Yeah.
How often will you move a stand during the season?
Tree stands?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. We have so many stands. One of my focuses for the off season And even here at the tail end of the season, I want to take down most of our lock-ons, almost all of them. And I want to condense our ladder stands into, more of the primary areas on the farm, whether it be funnel points or whatever the theme is, because you preset stands based off of multiple facets of the season. Your early season stuff, you could be in the timber on acorns, or if you have deer patterned, you want to have that, stand on your food plot. I've had a lot of thought with regard to field edge versus timber this year. I think timber is the better place to be, but so many times you don't have enough light, and your opportunity is happening in a low light situation, as to where with the field edge, if your opportunity is going to happen, you're going to have more of that last 10, 15 minutes of light to be able to capitalize on all the hard work. But with all of our stands, what ends up happening is we have our core stands, and then as we hang new stands, adjusting, we call them hang and bangs. So then the hang and bangs become more fixed, and then you end up with so many stands on a farm that it's too much.
Yeah.
And you're spending too much time trying to take care of the stands where you could be spending time elsewhere. So I think moving to a lot more ladder stands and just kind of efficiently, placing those ladder stands is going to save us a lot of time and potentially make us more effective. It'll probably be easier to communicate with the hunters of, hey, this is where we're hunting with south winds, right? And then this is, and maybe eliminate some of the, hunters trying to fudge on the wind because they think that that's where they need to be.
Yes.
Or stuff like that. So it would probably be a little bit more efficient. How do you do a lot of hanging during the season?
I'll hunt a ladder stand a little bit. Most of the time, it seems like I end up in my blind.
Okay.
I like the blind for the wind aspect. You can maybe play a different wind that way, or at least I feel like I can.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll hunt a ladder stand a little bit. Like I said, start to get soft. I like to be able to turn my heater on and like be able to be warm. Or if I leave work just a little early, and I'll go out there just so I'm dressed today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't have all my stuff with me. So I'll take advantage. I'd rather sit there and maybe not have the perfect setup, but at least spend the time in the woods rather than worried about having just the exact setup. So
I like that. And another thing that I've thought a lot about this year is maybe we're giving the deer too much credit. Just in terms of if you run into a deer unfavorably, whether you're on foot on your way to the stand and that deer bumps off, oh man, I ruined it. They're never coming back.
Yeah, they're coming back.
Yeah.
Hallie and I walked to the stand there Saturday night, and no more than we hit the woods there, we bumped 3 deer out just instantaneously, and
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Daddy, there's deer, and she was all excited and everything else, we climbed up in the stand and got everything settled and everything else. And if you've ever hunted with a 4-year-old, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. She just, Daddy, where's the deer? Daddy, I want to see some deer, and it's just, kid's a chatterbox anyway, but just amped up wanting to see deer, well, after things got settled back down, half hour later, more deer come back out. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, yes, I don't disagree with you there. We can negative hunt or negative sell ourselves and think something's over with, and maybe not take it as serious as we should sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're about running out of time, but I wanted to ask you real quick, anything going on at MTS that you want people to know about?
So, end of the year, we always got some guys taking some advantage of some tax stuff.
Okay.
I always joke that, first deer season, it dies. Then you roll into Thanksgiving and it dies. And you roll into second gun season and it dies. And all of a sudden everybody wakes up on Monday morning and says, hey, we got to spend money today. And that's pretty much what the phone's done today here is rang off the hook and said, hey, we need to get rid of a little money before the end of the year here. So that's, it's nice. We're going to finish the year fairly strong here. And, I guess, the only thing I want to say here is, this relationship here has been going on for a year. You come to me last December here and, I said, hey, let's get through the end of the year here and, we'll sit down in January and talk about this, but, this has been a great partnership. I've had a lot of fun coming on here. I think the first time we were on the air here, I didn't really know what to do. And I think the second time here we got in the groove. And this third time, I think it's more like you and I sitting here and having a normal conversation rather than, getting interviewed per se. So, no, it's been a great partnership. Appreciate everything that you and Chris have done for us. Look forward to continuing this partnership in the future. And, like I said, I think we bring up a lot of good points. I listen to your show every other Saturday morning too, not just when I'm on there. So I like some of the guests you got on here. And I like, even when you have the waterfowl hunter on here, or even when you have the wildlife biologist on here, I think there's always some sort of educational thing that somebody can pick out of this and say, well, hey, I can apply this to my farm, or hey, I can apply this to my hunting operation, or whatever that is. So I think you bring a lot of value to it. You bring value to my business. So I appreciate that. And like I said, I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Same, likewise. Thank you so much. That's such kind words.
Yeah,
I appreciate
I didn't even rehearse that. That comes right from the heart, Aaron.
I'm over here melting, man. I appreciate you so much. So thank you.
Thank
you for your trust.
Everything you and Chris do for us, it's greatly appreciated. Brian too. You guys have been great to work with. I probably am not as responsive as I should be some days. You guys try to do more for me or try to help me more than I give you credit for. So like I said, it's all appreciated what you guys do for us.
Well, it's great, man. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off on that.
All right.
Thank you.
I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas. Happy Thanksgiving that's already passed. But if you need to spend a little money before the end of the year, 27065 Crystal Lake Road, come out and see us. We'll take all the money you got or make a deal happen. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.